confused, difficult, overloaded environment of sound bites. But the truth is, we're not having a discussion worthy of our survival in this country. The newspapers won't be the ones to do it. We're going to have to figure out other ways to do it. I don't have an answer to that. I just want to raise the problem that it's got to be part of our solution. And it's got to be public education, not only here, but internationally, obviously, where the issues are at least as urgent. One of the things we're doing at Columbia, which I like in the last year and this year, is that we've created a global classroom where we have 15 campuses online once a week for an hour, so that we have an international discussion that includes New York, Quito, Ecuador, Sussex, England, Paris, Mekelle, Ethiopia, Ibadan, Nigeria, Delhi, Beijing, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, universities in all those places. And I do believe that somehow we should be able to use technology more effectively to spread knowledge, information, understanding. And I wouldn't mind if you did that between now and November 4 also. Because we're just sitting here like sitting ducks, or paralyzed moose, or whatever it is. And we shouldn't. We really shouldn't be sitting here just paralyzed. So that's the third area. Fourth is leadership by all key intellectual sectors, including the law. I would like to see the law school and the legal community step up to these problems more than they have. You know, we have, for example, international treaty obligations, which, as I understand it from the Constitution, makes those obligations part of our national law. In climate change, for example. But international law is such a weak reed in our system that it barely gets any traction at all. Why is that? How many of you are going to specialize in international law so that treaties, which are going to be vital for international action, have a force of law, an operational side to them? Or human rights law. We're all signatories to the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. We're in the 60th anniversary. Those rights are obviously not observed or operationalized for billions of people on the planet. And that document is viewed not as an instrument of international law, which I believe it should be, but as something that Eleanor Roosevelt did nicely 60 years ago. That can't actually be the way we're going to solve problems if we don't take these issues, the legal dimensions of these issues, with extreme seriousness. Seems to me international law should have the same gravity as domestic law. And the idea that, well, domestic law has real force behind it because of sovereignty and international law it does not, I think is actually an exaggerated difference between the two cases, because both of them are sustained by a self-fulfilling belief in their importance, nothing more. Domestic law can be as useless as international law if you don't believe in it. And international law can be as consequent as domestic law if you do believe in it. And so I do think that there's a major challenge here that is unfulfilled by legal scholarship, but also, obviously, not just the law. I don't mean to be picking on you, my own profession. Woo! Absolutely, completely, 100% captivated in the stock market as the central issue of economic analysis, and really wasting a lot of time and human resources on that, and taking issues of poverty or environmental sustainability as fringe issues that you might take one course in possibly on the side in one's economics training. And so I think that there's also been an abnegation of responsibility and failure of prioritization there as well. As I mentioned, a fifth point, we need to bring ethics explicitly back into our discussion in a very formal, self-conscious, educated, reflective way. Not just so you stay ethical and stay out of trouble, but the ethics of a global society which needs to exist but doesn't exist right now. We're so interconnected, we can't go on simply just hating each other or ignoring each other or ready to bomb each other or making the existence of others the existential challenge of our time. And so we need to face up to the kind of ethics that can support the things that will keep us safe, which I think is what ethics is really about in an important way. And finally, and as a general matter, I think that there is an important, it's not quite new definition, but a new boldness from universities that is going to be needed. And I see Harvard taking tentative steps in that direction, but I would like to see Harvard do a lot more than it's doing. I think universities actually have a unique role to play in addressing these problems. And that's not pure university chauvinism of someone that has lived within universities for 36 years, but it is maybe biased, but a considered view of what it's going to take to address the kinds of problems that I'm talking about this morning. First, only universities have the scientific knowledge within them across the various disciplines to be able to have a coherent knowledge base to the complex challenges that we have. And that's a wonderful thing. Governments don't, for sure. NGOs don't. The general public doesn't. And so if you do believe, as I do, that understanding the human biophysical interactions is fundamental for our well-being, the universities have necessarily a unique role to play in that. We have that cross-disciplinary capacity that no other institution has. I'd like to think that we are unbiased, relative at least to other institutions in society. I can tell you, we're not out for the buck, that's for sure. This can't be the way to go if you're trying to get rich. And so I think universities have a kind of credibility and an unbiasedness that does not come if you're working for the US State Department or if you're working for a business or most other institutions that are part of this challenge. Fourth, and Harvard certainly taught me this, this institution is probably almost uniquely for the long term. And so the ability of universities to think for the long term is also very unusual. And Harvard, more than any other institution on our continent, is certainly reflective of that. And the fifth point that I think is absolutely fundamental, and it's the reason why I'm so delighted to be here, is that I believe that universities are uniquely intergenerational in ways that are almost not occurring in any other social institutions of any kind. You know, students get younger every year, I find, and that's an absolutely great thing. There is inherently in the life of a university a rejuvenation of topics, points of view, and capacities every single year. So you literally, not just figuratively and not just as a nice word for me, you reflect the hopes of Harvard by your very being here. You are the embodiment of this institution, more than its faculty, I might say, because you're the ones that are going to carry all of this forward. And this intergenerational uniqueness of the universities, I think, is extraordinarily important.